A cartel stronghold in the mountains, convoys of gunmen, highways burning in western Mexico. One man sat at the center of it all, El Jardinero. For months, special forces tracked the elusive cartel boss linked to the feared CJNG empire. Now, a massive operation has triggered chaos, panic, and a dramatic turning point in Mexico's narco war. One of Mexico's most wanted cartel bosses has been captured, found hiding in a drainage ditch. Mexican special forces arrested Audias Flores Silva, known as El Jardinero, aka the Gardener, on April 27th in the western state of Nayarit. Flores' arrest triggered immediate violence across Nayarit. Drone footage from the municipality of Tecuala showed businesses, convenience stores, and supermarkets set ablaze. Roadblocks were erected on major highways, and the state government urged residents to limit travel and follow only official information. Flores was a regional commander of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the CJNG, controlling drug networks along Mexico's Pacific coast. Mexican security forces surrounded a cabin in El Mirador, roughly 20 kilometers north of the resort city of Puerto Vallarta. Flores had been protected by a perimeter of some 30 pickup trucks and more than 60 gunmen. His escorts scattered as a diversion, but Flores was found trying to conceal himself in a drainage ditch nearby. The United States, which designated JNGC as a terror organization in 2025, was offering a $5 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Flores after Cervantes' killing. American Ambassador to Mexico Ronald D Johnson announced the arrest on X.
The arrest of Audias Flores Silva, El Jardinero, a key leader of the violent CJNG, marks an important step against those who profit from fentanyl and drive violence in our communities. Actions like this are essential to ensuring that those who traffic drugs are held accountable.
Mexico's Navy, which led the operation, said it was carried out without a single shot being fired. More than 500 troops, 6 helicopters, and several planes were deployed following 19 months of surveillance. According to a Mexican security official who spoke on condition of anonymity to Reuters, US intelligence, including aerial surveillance, was also used in the operation. Flores had been considered a frontrunner to take over the CJNG after its longtime leader Nemesio Oseguera, alias El Mencho, was killed by security forces in February 2026. Carlos Olivo, a former DEA assistant special agent and CJNG expert, said the arrest would hit the cartel harder than even El Mencho's killing.
Flores was a significant figure, and his arrest will have a bigger effect on the cartel's operations than El Mencho being taken out.
Flores was flown to Mexico City the same night under heavy Navy escort. US authorities have sought his extradition. A separate arrest was also made, a man known as El Güero Conta, described by Mexican authorities as a key money launderer for Flores. It ended in a hail of bullets. On February 22nd, Mexican authorities announced the killing of Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho, the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. For years, he had been one of the most wanted men in the world, a shadowy figure accused of transforming his cartel into one of the most heavily armed criminal organizations on the planet. According to officials, the operation followed months of intelligence coordination. Security forces closed in on a rural compound in Jalisco. What followed was an intense firefight. By the end, El Mencho was dead. But if you think this story ends with the fall of a kingpin, think again. Because when Mexican forces have raided CJNG strongholds over the years, what they found looked less like a criminal stash and more like a battlefield armory. Belt-fed machine guns, Barrett .50 caliber rifles capable of piercing armor, rocket launchers, and improvised armored vehicles, known locally as monstruos. The obvious question is this: how does a drug cartel acquire firepower that rivals military units? You might assume such weapons arrive through secret foreign arms deals. In reality, many begin far more mundanely. Research analyzing firearm trace data has repeatedly shown that a significant share of weapons recovered at Mexican crime scenes originates in the United States. Independent studies examining court documents and ATF trace records found that licensed gun dealers in US border states are a primary source of firearms later seized from cartels. This is not conjecture, it is documented through serial number tracing. In multiple cases, high-powered rifles recovered in Mexico were purchased legally in Texas or Arizona, sometimes only months before being found in cartel hands. The process is often simple. A straw purchaser buys weapons legally. Those weapons are transferred to traffickers. They are smuggled south. Within weeks, they are operational in cartel arsenals. Mexican Defense Secretary, during a press conference on the recent killing of El Mencho, said that 80% of the weapons seized from cartels are of US origin.
It has been mentioned here, speaking of the general strategy, that 23,000 weapons have been secured by the administration. Of those 23,000 weapons, 80% are of North American origin. So, in this case, more or less, it is the same proportion.
In some documented cases, even .5 caliber rifles, weapons capable of disabling vehicles and penetrating fortified positions, were legally purchased in the US and later traced to cartel activity. These are not small pistols easily concealed. They are long-range, high-impact weapons. There is another dimension as well. Over the past 2 decades, tens of thousands of firearms were legally exported to Mexican state and municipal police forces from manufacturers in the United States, Europe, and Israel. These sales were government-to-government transfers. The weapons entered official inventories. But oversight gaps matter. Human rights and advocacy groups reviewing procurement records have warned that weak end-use monitoring increases the risk of diversion. In Mexico, where corruption within local police forces has been documented for years, diversion is not theoretical. Weapons intended for law enforcement have, in documented instances, leaked into criminal markets through theft, collusion, or resale. So when we talk about CJNG's arsenal, we are not describing a single pipeline. We are describing a system where legal civilian sales in the US feeds smuggling networks. A system where official exports to security forces can be diverted. A system where supply chains are porous. Now widen the lens. The global arms market is complex. Firearms are manufactured in one country, exported to another, resold, transferred, and sometimes lost from official inventories. Tracking them requires paperwork, serial numbers, and cooperation across jurisdictions. Reports over the years have documented that European and Israeli manufacturers supplied substantial quantities of firearms to Mexican security institutions between 2006 and 2018. These were legal sales, often approved under export regulations in those countries. The issue is not legality at the point of export. The issue is what happens after delivery. Researchers examining export data and Mexican procurement records found that hundreds of thousands of small arms entered Mexico's security forces during that period. Advocacy groups have argued that weak post-shipment monitoring increases the risk that some of those weapons may eventually circulate beyond official control. It is crucial here to separate fact from speculation. There is verified evidence that US civilian market weapons regularly flow into Mexico and are recovered from cartels. There is documented evidence that foreign manufactured weapons have been sold to Mexican security forces and that diversion risks exist in environments with corruption challenges. The broader truth, however, remains uncomfortable. Small arms are notoriously difficult to control once they enter global circulation. Diversion can occur years after initial export. Weapons can pass through multiple hands before surfacing in a crime scene thousands of miles away. Imagine the journey. A rifle manufactured in one country, exported legally to another, stored in an armory, diverted, sold, smuggled, fired in a cartel ambush. El Mencho capitalized on that ecosystem. Under his leadership, CJNG recruited former soldiers, adopted military tactics, and invested heavily in weapons that enhanced both lethality and intimidation. The image of convoy columns of armored trucks rolling through rural towns was not accidental. It was strategic theater backed by real firepower. Now that he is gone, the structural conditions remain. Mexico continues to record tens of thousands of homicides annually. Organized crime remains deeply entrenched. The United States continues to debate gun regulation and corporate liability. Exporting nations continue to wrestle with how to balance defense sales and human rights concerns.